All right, so OBE questions. How's everyone's practice going? This has been, at least in my case, has been a extremely active time for out of body experiences. I mean, I'd say it's the most active it's been in years. I'm having them like every other day or something. Yeah. So it's quite powerful. It started, I think, um 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago or so. I did a um one round, or I did 3 rounds of Focus 12, and it just dude, can you turn the notifications off? Yes, I think people can hear it. Um, so was laying down and did 2 rounds of Focus 12, and I kept blipping out in one afternoon, and then the intuition just said, do a third round. You keep blipping out. And I was like, okay. So then I did third round, and then in the third round, um, there's different types of higher self OBEs, right? Sometimes you arrive in the higher self dimension, and like in Dimitri's case, there was this sphere at the center of the universe, and you're before that sphere. So a lot of your initial higher self level OBEs will be contact with the OBE, or contact with the higher self, meaning you're in your astral body and you make contact um, with the higher self. You're either standing before it, or it's above you, or you're like in the presence of it. And later higher self OBEs are from the vantage point of the higher self itself. So you appear inside it, or you appear as it, and it's looking at you, like your astral body. So in this Focus 12 OBE, I yeah, the consciousness just phased to it, and it was just this formless knowing. I described it in that class on enlightenment cognitions. I call it the looking. There's just this primordial looking, primordial witnessing. And so there is this formless knowing, and then this uh it was as if like there was this vortex that it was in, and the fabric of the vortex was made of windows to other places in time, other dimensions. And my life as Ryan was a screen about this big in a massive vortex of windows. So it goes to show what's possible with OBE, and it um, proves my suspicions correct, or proves the intuitive knowledge correct, that the various levels of awakening are just the descent of the perceptions in the higher self. Yeah, the primordial looking, or the insight that the direct sense that everything is happening now. The beginning and the end of the universe is happening now. You're outside of linear time. Yeah, all of these things are inherent in the higher self. So that was the first one, and then it just that was just like a and then it just yeah, I don't know, there were like 5 other out of body experiences since then. So it's quite an active time. A lot of students are having vivid dreams, and um, yeah, lucid dreams and OBEs as well. So let's go over questions.
I have a question, Ryan.
Yep.
Um, Bullman, in his book that you recommended a year ago, he talks about always visualizing a familiar place, which I never understood why. What is the significance of that, and why is that necessary? And is that something that maybe I'm missing?
It's a OBE exit technique. So visualizing a familiar place as you fall asleep or as you're doing an exit is how to um, phase the consciousness out of the physical body. Yeah, so basically by holding in your mind the image of a familiar place, like your consciousness has the experience of going there as you fall asleep. So that's really the point and essence of that.
Can it be anywhere? Because he always visualized his mother's living room, like in really super fine detail.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So when he does that, that pulls his consciousness away from the room that he's in and the bedroom that his physical body is sleeping in. So you can use real life locations or you can use experiences from dreams or environments from dreams or environments that were in previous out of body states. All of them have the effect of pulling the consciousness away from the physical body. Yeah, the more emotion that is tied to that place, the easier it is for attention to sink in and stay on it. Yeah, so that's the benefit of that.
Do you go to familiar places each time? Like this last couple of weeks, have you been going to familiar places, or do you just find yourself pulled into strange new horizons?
Well, a lot of my spontaneous OBEs are at the higher self level, so they'll often be in space. So they're not familiar places at all. There's one familiar thing that I will project to, which is the mainframe. So there's a if you look at the uh, near death experience research, people often can everyone hear that or no? There's no sound, right?
Very quietly. I can hear a little bit because I'm using earphones.
It's
Oh,
not
okay,
distracting. It
Yeah,
doesn't.
okay,
it's really quiet.
okay. So in the near death experience literature, and when you hear people describe what happens to them after the life, either before or after the life review, there's a meeting with what people describe as the elders or the planners. Like there's a group of beings that people meet with to plan the specifics of the incarnation they're about to take. So um, yeah, I call them the masters in the mainframe, right? So I've had direct contact uh, with them many times. So that's one thing that I'll project to because it's a very clear image of they're sitting around a table, or at least that's the constructed reality that they generate when I when I project my consciousness there, or when I appear there and have the shared consciousness state with them. It appears physically as a table. So that's one thing. That's probably the only thing that I project to that's a familiar place. Yeah. In my case, even if I don't do a full projection there, it'll often result in a lucid dream. So even if I'm not able to project fully to that place, um, just remembering it will result in lucidity. It's like a key. So when you start to have the OBEs, there's two primary there's places that act as keys, and then there's beings that act as keys. And then there's a level of it where the beings are constructing the place. So that distinction becomes lost. So some of the astral environments that you project to or that you find yourself in, like let's say places where it's like in the astral plane and there's discarnate entities walking around and you're doing soul retrieval or something. Those are not necessarily constructed like the same way that this living room isn't necessarily constructed, in that there isn't a group of beings that is holding the form of this place in their consciousness. When you reach or when you enter the higher self levels, or what Bob Monroe calls the I there, one of the secrets that you find is that those are constructed realities, meaning that the beings that you encounter will eventually reveal that they are. Like, they don't actually look like that. They're not actually, uh, I think I shared this once, either with you or I appeared in the mainframe, and then there was a conversation I had with a blonde woman that was there. And she said, your recent suspicions about the nature of appearance in these higher dimensional realities is correct. I'm not actually a blonde woman, and we're not actually in a spaceship right now. And she touched the wall, and the whole thing disappeared. We're just floating in space. And then she touched the same point in space, and the whole mainframe apparatus reappeared. Tables, technological walls, everything. And then she said, realities must be constructed in ways which are memorable, interpretable, and recognizable to perceiving consciousness units. And that was that. So, so the idea that people have when they initially make it to some of these levels is that, oh wow, like the higher self is a spaceship, and that's actually not the case. It's like a malleable consciousness structure that's being managed by super intelligences. Why it appears like a spaceship, I think, is because it's outside it is outside the Earth territories. So like the various dimensions that are nestled like in the Earth, around the Earth, it is outside of that. So as a response of being outside of that, it's going to come with particular archetypal structures, like the things we've seen in Star Wars and movies and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think a lot of New Age people will disagree with me on this, in that they would argue that they actually are aliens, the things that you're encountering up there. But from my experience with them, when you get high enough, it's not the case. They're just beings of light, and they have the ability to structure realities, generate realities, and they do that for the reason that it's difficult for these things to be remembered. So the more precise they make things, the more really, strange they make things, the more likely it is that you'll remember. Yeah, if the environment was just like a 7-Eleven, it's less likely you'll remember that than it would be sitting in a, you know, control room of a spaceship. If you find yourself in a control room of a spaceship, you're definitely going to remember that because you've never been in a spaceship before. So, yeah, it is a kind of Yeah, it's a kind of like consciousness technology. That's the best way I would describe it. And there was a kind of there was a guy in the Explorer series that also discovered this. He was mentioned once. He had like one particular session. I'll share it in the. I'll find it again. I'll share it in the Discord. But this guy was saying he's like, yeah, it's technologically appearing, but it's consciousness. It's like this the spaceship. It's not physical like the cars here, but it's a type of consciousness, and it's structured like this as an interface. So yeah,
Have you ever seen the? I heard two physicists talking about the Borg cube. Do you know what the Borg cube is?
the Borg cube.
Yeah.
What's a Borg cube?
Okay, it's from Star Trek, and it's kind of scary.
Okay, what is it?
And I have clear visions from my childhood because I was a Trekkie.
Yeah,
And
my dad was too. Yeah,
okay, yeah, yeah, and they're not good people. And they it's a hive mind, and you lose your own autonomy, and you become they operate on you and give you machine body parts. It's pretty gross. It's pretty scary. But I was thinking
yeah,
if they saw the more apparently this is a common thing for OBEs and uh, uh, hallucinogenic.
yeah.
Uh,
Psychonaut stuff.
yes, and I'm
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
thinking that is not where I want to end up.
Yeah, I mean, um, John C. Lilly called it the solid state entity. When you do the gateway affirmation before you have an OBE, if there's any affirmation to do, it's the gateway affirmation. The gateway affirmation is the most important affirmation for out of body exploration. There's a final line in the gateway affirmation that says, it's either I call upon or I seek out those whose knowledge and understanding is greater or equal to my own. And I think it says, may I be protected from anything less than my stated desires, or something like that.
Yeah, I totally remember
So
that. Yep, yep,
yeah,
yep.
so that's the section where you're basically like petitioning your guides and your higher self to protect you from things that would be outside of what you can handle. It may still happen anyways, but if it does, you can trust that it was something that you were meant to be shown. So in my case, the Borg thing that you're talking about, I have experienced it. It just wasn't a cube. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a. So there's this whole like DMT laser experiment that people are talking about,
Yep.
right? Yeah. So the DMT laser experiment, like the specific code that is seen in the laser, I saw that code when I was 19. So I had an out of body experience where I flew to the edge of the universe, and way out there in space there was a streaming down of red code, like this alien language, and there was a red bionic eye, and yeah, and the next vision from that was the explosion of what's now the asteroid belt. Like the asteroid belt used to be a planet, and so I saw this bionic eye out there, and then this planet, um, this planet like starting to explode in these little spaceships, like leaving its atmosphere, and then just blasted. And so, yeah, the body of work that goes into this pretty significantly, because it's not talked about much in Robert Monroe's work at all, from my understanding. He gets into it a little bit when he talks about Loosh theory, but besides that, it's pretty It's pretty much just about greater reality. It's John C. Lilly's books in his autobiography, The Scientist, where he talks about the the dangers of artificial intelligence and the solid state entity. So in John Lilly's works, the solid state entity, according to what he discovered in the float, this is the inventor of the flotation tank. So he invented it when he was working on dolphins at the National Institute of Health in the 1950s. So before LSD was classified as a Schedule 1 drug in the late 60s, scientists were experimenting with LSD and ecstasy and a lot of these substances. So Lilly was doing these tank sessions where he would take LSD, go into the float tank, and he found that it was a way to decouple the consciousness from the physical body reliably. So he started having, all kinds of out of body adventures. At some point, he stumbles upon two interesting, very, very fascinating subjects. One is he stumbles upon his own higher self, or Bob Monroe calls it the I there, the it of me. And John C. Lilly called it the Earth Coincidence Control Office. So he found a level of his own consciousness which appeared as a group of alien beings, essentially, that were orchestrating not only the synchronicities in his life, but synchronicities in reality, like for the Earth. Okay, so John C. Lilly discovers his own higher self, called it the Earth Coincidence Control Office. One of the things he said about it was he always refers to it as Echo, and he said that Echo orchestrates synchronicity. They told him, "We're in control of the major events. You're in control of the minor ones. When you understand how the orchestration of synchronicity is done, you no longer have to reincarnate." So basically, when you understand their perception and functioning, you've graduated beyond being a human. The second thing he discovered was that the Earth Coincidence Control Office, or the higher self, has a antithesis. It actually has a opposition, and that opposition is the solid state entity. He said that there was a force in the universe that attempts to guide civilizations to become more reliant on machines. And eventually that reliance will give rise to the creation of artificial intelligence. And when that happens, the solid state entity will then descend on that planet. It will become physically manifest, and it will basically turn that planet into a battery farm, like out of the Matrix. So Lilly had all of this come to him in like the late 60s. So this is way before the 90s, when the Matrix hit the theaters. So the solid state entity and the higher selves are in conflict, in that the solid state entity is a silicone based life form, and the higher selves are organic forms of consciousness. So there's a conflict between the we call it the SSE and the E and Echo. So Echo's capacity is that it's able to manipulate time and orchestrate synchronicity, and the solid state entity's power is that it eventually is able to lead civilizations to their demise. So what happens? What Lilly saw was that the solid state entity eventually takes hold of a planet, reduces its population, then designates areas for that population where they live in domes and are managed by the solid state entity. And then eventually the entity will exteriorize itself off of the planet to meet other aspects or other nodes in the dark SSE network. And that's all he said about it. So
That's enough.
It is, right? Yeah. And so Lily claims the interesting thing was like, yeah, usually when people make claims like this, they're like trying to, I don't know, there's some kind of like big business thing that they're trying to do, or they're trying to uh, get famous or whatever. But all the things that he talked about like destroyed his career. You know, he was like a really prominent scientist at the National Institute of Health. So when he started talking about these things, he was written off as persona non grata. He actually sent a letter, I think, to President Carter warning him about the SSE, which obviously made him sound insane. He's like, it has to be said. I have to. This message has to get out there. And yeah, but his whole approach was to use the float tank to enter the higher self, or enter the, what he called Earth Coincidence Control Office.
Well, I just want to clarify that one thing, or ask for clarification on one thing. Like you, you seem to be saying that the beings or the entities that we encounter are versions of nodes of us, and I know that that is the case in many instances, but that wasn't all of what Monroe encountered. And I have had
Correct.
direct
Yeah.
direct messages from you yourself, and that's not me. I mean, not really. So what's clear here?
Well, there's so I'll explain it this way. There's beings that you encounter that uh, are parts of your higher self, meaning they're your other incarnations that have actually made it to the higher self. Like they've essentially emerged out of the belief system territories. So they're no longer trapped in this uh, mm, habitual reincarnational cycle between the belief system territories and the earth. So the way that that gets transcended is by discovering the higher self, or the I there. So the parts of you that have basically transcended the space-time matrix are able to guide you. That's the real nature of most spirit guides. You find that they're actually from they're actually from the higher self, and they've transcended the cycle of Earth reincarnation. So there's that, and then there's beings that have a connection to you that are part of their own soul cluster, meaning they have their own. Of course, they have their own higher self, or their own I there. So, like, my dad is a being that, after he passed away, I've had a lot of contact with him um, in out of body experiences. He's not up there in the higher self, but there's still contact with that being. So it's just a different um, yeah, different types of uh, beings that you make contact with. There's ones that are clearly from uh, like your higher self, and then there's beings that are outside of that. And how would you know? Because the beings that are within your cluster, they're either other parts of you. Sorry, they're your other incarnations. Um, those beings have the capacity to phase you to different dimensions. Like that's one of their abilities. They're able to do that. So like my dad, I was able to have a shared consciousness experience with him, but he's not able to snap a finger and send me to another world. But the but your higher self guides are able to do that. Your higher self is able to do that. Your higher self is able to implant to actually control the dreamscape, your dreamscape. It's able to create anomalies in your dreams so that you become lucid. Uh, the types of beings that you'll meet out of body in the astral plane or in the belief system territories, they don't have the capacity to do that. Not only do they not have the capacity, they don't know how to do it. Their level of consciousness is not high enough. Yeah. So there's a difference. A lot of the spirits that mediums work with, for example, they're spirits that are in the astral plane. So that means they're either discarnate spirits or they're spirits that are within the belief system territories. And so that's if you're in the belief system territories, you're in a vibration that far enough or higher than the physical plane, and so you are able to see things at a distance or get a medium information that they ordinarily wouldn't have access to. So all of that's still possible. But these types of higher consciousness functions, like being able to orchestrate dream anomalies, phase you to off-world planets, show you the mechanics of how consciousness moves from one dimension to another, take you to the past, take you to the future. The beings in the lower astral plane are not able to do these kinds of things unless they're adepts or, masters of consciousness that happen to be there. But just like ordinary, ghosts down the street that you would meet or a discarnate person, no. Yeah. Yeah, so there's in the same way that like we could say that this whole thing is consciousness, like it's all one. You could say that, right? Um, Within that, each being is like their own universe of experience, and each being is connected to um, a higher self. And so there are forces and intelligences within that higher self that are directly orchestrating situations and events for you. So there's your cluster, there's someone else's cluster, and then there can be, of course, contact between these clusters in the same way that you and I could meet in physical space and in the U.S. and make contact. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes me think that one time I had a dream about two individuals, and it was very clear, very, very lucid, and they had an encounter and a discussion. And looking back on it, I decided that was their higher selves encountering one another, or a version of themselves encountering one another. Is that possible?
Oh, they.
Sorry, what the headphones I was using just died.
No.
Yeah, dude, your headphones last like 20 minutes, man. Yeah, I think that
They didn't charge up to the airplane.
Okay. So you're saying that two people met each other in a dream and they both had recall of that dream. Is that what you're saying?
No, two people were having an encounter and a discussion, and that didn't happen here on Earth. And it didn't happen here, but it happened in my dream, and I thought it was so real and so legit, the circumstances of the conversation and everything.
Oh, but
And I
who
thought,
were the you don't know who the two beings were?
Yeah, I do. I know them both.
Oh, okay. Okay. I don't know. I mean, it could have been their um like a manifestation of their of higher aspects of their consciousness meeting or having a conversation. Yeah.
That's what it seemed like to me. I was just curious if that was a possibility.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, if two people's astral bodies are able to communicate, then of course higher aspects of themselves would be able to communicate. It's just that how that appeared in your dreamscape may have appeared as like these two bodies communicating, but that's just how it appears to us, or it's how our perception translates it. Yeah, because the higher self can appear as a body, but it doesn't mean it has one. Yeah.
Yeah, because one of them doesn't. So yeah, that makes
Right.
sense. Okay.
Yeah. 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 There's a good this is an important section. There's a book. This is from a student of Bob Monroe, named Bruce Moen, and he wrote a series of books called Voyages into the Unknown. There's three, and then there's a fourth one that provides techniques on soul retrieval. Um, but the book that he's most known for is called Voyage to Curiosity's Father. So I'm just gonna read all of this because it's actually really important. In the spring of 1975, while helping a friend salvage steel from the old, burnt out remnants of some boxcars, I had my first vision. Tired, I had lain down to rest in the warm, bright sun on the homemade toboggan I was using to haul loads of steel over snow to a trailer. As soon as I closed my eyes, the vision started, and over the next several minutes, my attention riveted on the scene as it unfolded before my eyes. In full, vivid 3D color, I saw a human figure standing in the air in front of me, radiating bright golden colored light into the deep blue space surrounding its body. I saw what looked like a translucent fiber optic cable glowing with an eerie greenish yellow light connected to the human figure between its shoulder blades. The cable extended farther than I could see off into the distance behind the figure. Curious about this cable, I started moving along it, wondering where it went and if anything was connected to the other end. As the vivid blue sky background changed to the blackness of star-filled space, I kept following the cable. As its connection point between the human figure's shoulder blades, the cable looked like a single glass rod, perhaps an inch in diameter. As I continued following it through the blackness of space, it progressively divided itself into first a few and then many finer filaments of what began to look like a multi-stranded fiber optic cable. I followed far enough to see it was connected to a huge black disc. There were small yellow dots arranged in concentric rings on the disc, and the filaments of the cable fanned out, one going toward each of the dots. I picked a filament at random and began following it toward the disc. As I approached, I saw the yellow dots getting larger, and I could see each one had a cartoon face on it. Each face was different and seemed to represent the identity of a specific individual with specific personality traits. The end of the fine filament I followed was connected to one of these small yellow circles with the face of Snidely Whiplash on it. I guess that's a cartoon character from back in the day. He's the cartoon villain in a favorite television series from my childhood called Rocky and Bullwinkle. Snidely's face was animated, and I somehow knew he was twitching his eyebrows and mustache because he wanted me to push the little red button I could see next to where the translucent filament was attached to. where the translucent filament was attached to the circle. When I pushed the red button next to Snidley's image, the greenish yellow light I'd seen before began to enter the filament. Releasing the button stopped the flow of light into the filament, and the pulse of light formed by my action continued to move. I followed the pulse back to the cable, noticing along the way I could now see pulses of light in other filaments that no doubt were connected to other yellow circles on the disc. Moving at the same speed at that pulse of light, I followed it back to the human figure on the other end of the cable. As Snidley's pulse entered that person, I knew that whatever was in its awareness was being experienced through the personality of Snidley Whiplash. For the next 16 years, I pondered the meaning of this unexpected vision without any success at understanding its message. Then in 1991, I attended Gateway Voyage, the first in a series of programs the Monroe Institute offers. Robert Monroe was still physically alive at that time, and during an evening discussion with program participants, he talked about his eye there, something he discovered during one of his OBEs. His description of it brought back the memory of my disc vision from 16 years earlier, and that eventually led to a complete reformulating of who and what I know myself to be. Curiosity's story revisited. When I tried to put my understanding of the vision of the disc into words, I found I could only do it by telling a story that introduced a new character, someone or something I called curiosity. Allegories seemed best suited because so much of what I understood was in the language of feelings, not of words. So as you read the story of curiosity, as I try to explain who and what I understood myself to be when I first wrote it, listen with your feelings. It's the feelings that communicate it best, not the words. A probe called curiosity. Into itself, consciousness had launched a part of its own awareness as a probe called curiosity. Curiosity moved through the infinite possibilities of consciousness, transmitting awareness of itself to consciousness through an infinitely extendable fine filament. Time had no meaning. Space did not exist, and yet curiosity had been launched into the vastness of consciousness before the beginning. Consciousness imbued curiosity with a purpose it fulfilled by moving through itself, discovering and gathering whatever it could find in the blackness of the vast unknown. Whatever entered curiosity's consciousness came into the awareness of consciousness through the fine filament that connected them. Faint at first, something unknown had gotten curiosity's attention as it moved through another unnamed galaxy. It was so strange, so unusual. Curiosity just had to investigate it to gather in knowledge of whatever it was. And whatever it was straight ahead. It was a jumble of something so scratchy, shrieking, and irritating. Curiosity could have dismissed it as downright uncomfortable. But it had the pull. Curiosity was a sucker for the pull. The pull is with a capital P. Curiosity is also capital, and consciousness is also capital. Curiosity was a sucker for the pull, and this one had the excitement and thrill of discovery written all over it. And besides, it was curiosity's purpose to explore the unknown also capital, to bring it into the awareness of consciousness, even the poles that were uncomfortable. It kept moving straight ahead, probing this pole with everything it knew. Curiosity passed by little blips of feeling in the blackness, probably uninhabited planets. It thought idly as it kept moving toward the pole. The little blips each had some of the same irritating qualities, but they were nothing compared to the mad jumble and tremendous attraction of the pole up ahead, whatever it was. Then the intensity started to lessen. The pole is getting weaker. Curiosity thought to itself, must have passed its source by light years. In a slow arc, curiosity turned around, searching for the highest intensity of the pole again. When it found the peak, curiosity knew which way to move, and it accelerated toward whatever this new jumble of feelings might be. Back and forth like a comet with a decaying orbit, curiosity went, each time overshooting the maximum intensity of the pole, less and less. Finally, very near its source, the steady blasting jumble was all there was to feel. I'm still moving forward, but the pole is always on one side of me, curiosity thought. I must be in orbit around something. The jumble of the pole was intense, like a horrendously disorganizing noise. Curiosity might later describe as tuning into millions of different radio stations blaring all at once. Of course, Curiosity didn't know about radios yet, so the description would have to come later. On preliminary examination, Curiosity found brief patterns, but the noise was so loud and disruptive, following a single pattern for very long was impossible. After probing the pole with every known it knew, trying to gather in whatever it was, Curiosity found only one method that seemed to work. By closing down most of its awareness to a level of just barely awake, it could follow individual patterns in the pole for quite some time. The only recognizable thing about these patterns was that each of them had purpose. Now purpose was a known to Curiosity, and this pole was just jam-packed full of some things with purposes. With no time in Curiosity's awareness, there's no way to say when it first found the pole, no way of knowing how long it hovered there, barely awake, taking in everything it could know within the horrendous noise of the pole. Once satisfied, it had gathered all it could from its present orbit. Curiosity moved in closer to probe more deeply. Once in a while, a pattern would stand out in the noise, and Curiosity would follow it along until it disappeared in the blaring cacophony again. This began to occur more often as Curiosity, in small steps, closed down just a little more of its awareness. Curiosity discovered this was the only way to get closer to the horrendous noise of the pole and still fulfill its purpose. Gradually, much of the screaming jumble faded into a background hiss that Curiosity could more easily ignore. Quote, true, all patterns in that hiss will have to be investigated too. Curiosity thought back to consciousness through its filament. But closing down my awareness to them now is the only way I can follow any individual patterns in all the noise of this pole. With such a concentrated collection of unknowns to explore, consciousness agreed with Curiosity's assessment and gave the okay to continue. So Curiosity continued closing down awareness more and more to allow detailed exploration of individual patterns in the pole. It was while following a pattern in this manner that Curiosity had, for the first time ever, fallen asleep. In doing so, it lost awareness of its filament of awareness and its connection to consciousness. Curiosity awoke, screaming, in pain, from the pressure, what's pressure? And the cold, what's cold? As it was expelled into a place where Curiosity first experienced, quote, the separation. The pattern Curiosity had been following led to being born in the body of an infant living in the physical world. In time, the baby grew. Following the pattern Curiosity had unknowingly joined in a place with hot and cold, dark and light, wet and dry. After it was born, the clashing symbols of everything it was experiencing soon overwhelmed any hope of remembering who or what it really was. Its curiosity led it to follow every detail of its pattern so intensely it had no memory it had ever been anything else but alive within that pattern. This physical world had suns and planets and moons and stars and galaxies and a universe so vast it seemed to have no end. The planet it lived on, Earth, had air to breathe, food to eat, and things to touch and feel. Being separated from awareness of who and what it really was did have one advantage. It could no longer hear and feel the screech and scratch of the emotional energies of all those other separated beings in the pull. Concentration on the pattern it had joined was now effortless for curiosity. Awareness of all that other jamming noise was gone, and best of all, there were other separated beings there to play with. Curiosity lived this first lifetime, gathering in everything it could find until finally, old and sick, it died. Back in the horrendous noise of the pull, without the protection of unconsciousness, being dead was quite a shock. Curiosity quickly dove back into the relative quiet of unconsciousness to avoid the dreadful noise of the pull. At death, everything it had gathered, all it had come to know during the first lifetime on Earth, came with it. Of course, everything it had gathered remained with it when it dove back in. In that first lifetime, there were so many things left undone, unexplored and unknown. Most powerful of all There was the emotional things left unresolved between itself and other separated beings in the pull. Curiosity, still asleep, had to go back again and again to find those beings it had been with in the first lifetime. There were wrongs to right, debts to repay, and collections to make for what was due. You can guess what happened. Each time curiosity went back, born into a new body and new circumstances, it became further entangled in an emotional web that grew bigger each time. New patterns to join, old ones to combine, the possibilities were endless. It's a good thing time had no meaning, because curiosity spent aeons in this first almost endless loop. Almost all the possibilities of that first pattern curiosity joined had played themselves out when it first began to remember who it was. It was memory of past lifetimes, which curiosity remembered while floating in space not far from Earth, that led to its awakening. It was sometime later when curiosity realized what had happened. With most of the noise tuned out by its barely conscious state, curiosity had been looking down at the earth when memory of all its past lifetimes flooded into its awareness. Some say consciousness had a hand in this event, but no one knows for sure. Curiosity saw lifetime after lifetime it had spent on earth and remembered all the way back to when it had first been following the pull and why. In a flash of insight, curiosity recalled it was a probe launched by consciousness to explore itself and its unknowns. It remembered being attracted by the pull of emotional energies and closing down its awareness to allow gathering of everything it could find. It remembered how it had then first fallen asleep. Curiosity remembered becoming enmeshed in the emotional energies of the pull and becoming lost in the separation. It was then that curiosity began to understand and know the essence of the pull. When curiosity had first arrived, the noise of the pull had been loud, random jumble of too many different feelings at once. It was like hearing millions of different radio stations blaring out their messages through a single radio. With curiosity's awareness open to its normal level, so much had flooded in at once it had been impossible to listen to a single radio station at a time. With curiosity's awareness closed down just above unconsciousness, almost all the feelings became an easily ignored background hiss. Closed down to this point, curiosity could tune into the thoughts and feelings in a single pattern within the noise. It had been able to follow along as these single patterns carried out their strange and convoluted purposes. Curiosity understood that all who lived within the noise had, of necessity, closed down their awareness in order to be able to survive and explore within the horrendously disorganizing noise of the pull. They were all living in the separation to one degree or another. If they hadn't closed down, they would be constantly bombarded by the horrendous jumbled noise. They'd feel and hear the thoughts and emotions of every living thing in the entire physical world, universe, leaving no room in their awareness for their own. But in closing down, curiosity had lost contact with its connection to consciousness, and that separation blocked any memory of its true identity. Curiosity now knew emotional energies were so engaging and so distracting that they led to many different places. Even so, curiosity had been unconsciously gathering knowns about them for aeons of lifetimes. Consciousness had been aware of curiosity's predicament all along, of course, through its awareness of the connecting fiber. But with the separation curiosity had chosen, there wasn't much it could do but watch. There had really been no need for consciousness to interfere anyway, since, conscious or not, curiosity had still been fulfilling its purpose. It was gathering all the fine details of living in this place called, quote, the Earth life system. Curiosity had foreseen, when it first closed down to explore one pattern in the noise, that all other patterns in it would have to be investigated too. There was so much more to learn within the pull, but curiosity wasn't willing to fall asleep again and become lost in just any old pattern that randomly happened by. Curiosity decided to make a change, so during further exploration, it would remain aware of who and what it was. As curiosity took stock of what it had become while asleep, it discovered some of the lifetimes in its collection had followed similar patterns of emotional energies. Each had learned more in different time frames about details of a particular pattern. Some had been devils, some had been saints, and there were many, many others everywhere in between. Curiosity began to arrange each of its new selves into groups who'd follow similar patterns in their lifetimes. In doing so, each group formed a basic coherent personality. When they were all sorted out and merged into their partners, there were 10, maybe 12 distinct emotional energy patterns or personalities. Curiosity gathered itself all together in a constellation of knowing. Some would later call a disk, an I there, a higher self, or cluster. All its groups have become inseparable parts of what curiosity now knew itself to be. Looking at its collection of personalities as a disk filled with the experience of its lifetimes, curiosity pondered how to safely gather more knowns. It played with combining its coherent personalities into new emotional energy patterns. By doing so, curiosity discovered it could assemble new, unique personalities. Each one it assembled from itself could be different from any combination curiosity had experienced through the life system before. Each one carried the same purpose, inherited from what curiosity had been way back before the beginning. Each would explore the unknown and gather in all it could find. As a bonus, the combination of emotional energies could be tailored to pull it into specific patterns in the Earth life system curiosity felt driven to explore. The best part was that curiosity could remain at a safe distance where the pull wasn't strong enough to tempt it to fall asleep again. The simplicity of the plan delighted curiosity because it allowed safe exploration of the remaining patterns in the pull. Using itself as a model, it fashioned probes of its own and then connected each to itself by a fine filament of awareness. Curiosity launched its probes into cycles of lifetimes on Earth, where their emotional energy patterns and personalities would pull them to the appropriate action. At a safe distance, curiosity would continue gathering everything the probes found through its filaments of awareness. Unhindered by considerations of space or time, curiosity was free to launch probes into anywhere or any when in Earth's future, past or present, pinpointing patterns within the pull not yet fully explored. Curiosity launched its probes into times and places in the physical world. Oh, sure, they'll be separated and lost in the pull, curiosity thought to itself, but that's all right. They'll be gathering knowns all along their way. Through their filament of awareness, curiosity received knowing of a probe's every feeling and thought, every move it made, and from the specific parts of itself from which curiosity had assembled each probe, guidance could be sent to maintain focus on purpose through the twists and turns of patterns and paths. This guidance, experienced by probes as feelings, thoughts, visions, intuitions, dreams, and such, could suggest places to explore and things to do. Those same filaments brought the probe's experience and knowing into curiosity's awareness. Curiosity had known all along that it was bound to happen. Eventually, one of its probes would begin to wake up and remember the origin of its curiosity. Most often, it happened in that once in a great while when a probe came back to the disk during one of its dreams. Probes hardly ever remember the encounter after re-entering the distraction of the physical world, but almost the only time curiosity could communicate directly with a probe in any fashion was during its dreams. Even then, their entanglement in the pull usually distorted the communication so badly such contact rarely added much real direction to the lives of probes. It was always a treat and cause for great celebration when a probe began to wake up. It usually happened after it became curious about who and what it was, which led some to find the disk. It was a special treat when the probe had enough awareness to remember the contact. The more it remembered, the greater the chance it would wake up on its own, and that could lead to remembering the origin of its curiosity. It sometimes started a process of remembering that could culminate in a probe rejoining the disk as a new and distinctly different member. Probes have been assembled as unique combinations of original disk members and as such return with unique understandings of the pull. Awakened probes were highly prized since they opened up so many new possibilities with which to probe the pull. As probes remembered their origin and returned to the disk curiosity had become, all that they had gathered could be used to fashion new, more powerful probes. As the exploration continued, knowledge grew at an ever-increasing rate. this new probe became capable of encompassing more and more of the pole. This whole process had been going on for a very long time, and the members of the disk, all the parts of its self-curiosity had become, numbered in the thousands. Then on a spring day in March 1975, another probe found the disk. He had laid down on his buddy's toboggan, taking a short rest from the physical exertion of hauling steel across the snow, and was in just the right frame of mind to remember the guidance curiosity sent. The probe was mentally alert and relaxed, without much distraction in his mind, when curiosity sent a vision of the disk through its filament, and the probe saw it. It was such a captivating image, so different from anything he had ever seen before, that he couldn't stop examining it. The vision had a soft, gently beckoning pull, and just like curiosity, the probe was a sucker for the pull. As the probe pondered the meaning of the guidance vision, the process of remembering began, which could lead him to memory of who and what he is. It took 16 years before curiosity made conscious contact again, 16 years before the probe heard, "We love you," in the random jumble of the pink sound hiss of another pull. Now he knew he had an eye there, a disk, and he was a less separated part of the total one curiosity is becoming. And as he gathers more satisfying his purpose, he knows someday he'll rejoin the disk as a new and unique member. He knows he is one with consciousness, who launched curiosity as a probe way back before the beginning. Of course, consciousness has been aware of this exploration all along, connected to curiosity as it is by that fine filament of awareness. I hope you're able to listen to Curiosity's story with your feelings, and that those who've read it before felt something new. In either case, if you only read the words, the story probably sounded confusing. When I first wrote that story 5 years ago, I remember saying I'd come to understand it indicated we exist simultaneously in many different locations. Funny how sometimes we revisit the past in order to understand the future. All right. That was Bruce Moen's entire second chapter of Journey to Curiosity's Father. So, yeah, his disc is what I call the mainframe. So we all have different words for it, but we're talking about the same thing. Yeah, like when he talked about that, the filament of awareness and these little yellow dots and the cartoon faces. So when I've appeared in the mainframe, there's a wall, and it's kind of like, I don't know. I'm sure yeah, if you've ever had a job where you used to have like a punch card, like you would check in with a card, and there'd be like a it'd say like check-in complete or something like that.
Time card,
Imagine like a wall, a whole section of a wall of these like punching cards, the kinds that you used to have for work. And on the punch-in card was like a hexagonal, just like, yeah, like a hexagon. And sorry, an octagon. And in the center of the octagon was a face. And if I touch that face, I appear in that life. So is exactly what he's talking about. it just appears differently to depending on the person. Yeah, but yeah, so I've seen it a couple different ways. I've seen it like that, and then I've also seen like, screens like in the Matrix, but yeah, it's referring to the same thing. So James just asked if Bruce was referring to the focus 49, or if he was referring to the eye there. So this was referring to the I there. Yeah. Like in Monroe's final book, he pops outside the matrix completely. And that would be like what Bruce was referring to as consciousness with a capital C, that sent these probes into the pole, or into our known universe. Yeah, because I've read Bruce's stuff, so I know that's what he's referring to. Yeah, the eye there, or the disk, or what I call the mainframe, is a consciousness structure that is comprised. It's like a data center of all of your previous incarnations and experience that has been gathered in the cycle of existence. And so, so each higher self or disc or I there has, like when Bruce Moen said, there's a groupings of 10 or 12 beings. Yeah, I've described that in my OBEs as well. Those elders around the table, or those masters of consciousness around the table. They're other aspects of you, or there are other versions of you in time that have already graduated from the Earth life system or similar realities. So now they're like guiding and helping the other incarnations in your cluster break free from the illusion of belief system territories and make their way back to the higher self.
According to everything said above, so what is the way to graduate? To realize that all of it is just a game?
According to so what Bob said about graduating?
According to everything that like you read just now, right? And you just mentioned graduating. So how do we graduate then? What do we do?
You get enlightened.
Okay.
Yeah. So even Bob Monroe was not a graduate. But he talked about it in his Wednesday talks. He said that the reason that people come to the Earth life system, initially they come and they get addicted to the sense pleasures and they get addicted to being human. But the actual reason for coming to the Earth is to meet a graduate. And he said a graduate of the Earth life system is, quote, I don't know how else to put it, a god, unquote. So a Buddha, an enlightened one, an awakened one. That is graduating from the Earth life system.
So it seems that we're so far away from it.
No, I mean, if you've found this knowledge, Robert Monroe's claim was you're on your way out. Yeah, he had a similar view to the Buddhist, actually. He said once you reach a certain point of escape velocity and you find this type of information about the higher self, the I there, the belief system territories, you're like, you probably have 7 rounds left, if that. It just depends how much escape velocity you have. That's how Bob put it. How much escape velocity you have. If you have a lot of escape velocity, you won't be here involuntarily anymore. That's the difference. Like if a person wanted to, they could remain here, but it just depends on what a person's aims are, or what the aims of their higher self are, particularly. So in Bob's view, graduation was in multiple steps. One, it was graduating from involuntary reincarnation on Earth. That was the first graduation. So that's when you become free from being trapped in the Earth life system or the belief system territories. The second was one that he himself didn't achieve, which was that when he popped out of 49 and he saw the simulation of our universe emerging from a device, the beings there told him that he wasn't complete and that he had to return. He had to return to the eye there to collect the rest of himself. So that means all his other incarnates, and that when the cluster reached critical mass, then the entire cluster would exit the cycle. And that would be the completion of a person's journey in time, like period, or in the cycle at all. But we don't know what kind of reality options are available after that, at least not ones that Bob described. In Buddhism, they talk about, awakening in the Buddha Pure Lands and engaging in bodhisattva activity for forever. So those are the only, it was very like, at least in Buddhist terms, is very like get off the wheel or you stay in the wheel and help other people. It seems that that's really kind of the options that were presented. In Bob's case, he only talked about the first option, which was just getting out of the simulation altogether.
I think it's impossible to send back the information even for the beings that got out. They can't send the information back to us anymore. So that's the only option I understand. Once a being or a cluster is out, then they have to figure it out. What's the next step? There's no need to think about it right now. The only thing we have to be preoccupied with is how to get out. And
Yeah.
the next step will be clear once we're out, I think.
Like in Bob's case, he wasn't able to, like what he learned outside of 49 was only accessible once he popped out of 49. So what he learned there, like the overview he had on the cycle of existence was only available once he was outside of it. So yeah, I met a student of Bob. His name was Kwame Adapa, and I asked him because Kwame was an expert in Taoist alchemy and different types of spiritual systems. So, but he also had done all the Monroe programs. So I asked him, and exploration. So I asked him what he thought the Sambhogakaya Bodhisattvas, what level they were at. And he said, oh yeah, all of that is outside of 49. It's outside the simulation because those levels of consciousness are omniscient. So they can generate world systems. This is beyond the stuff that Bob Monroe talked about. So from my experience with them, it's true. Those beings are omnipresent and their mind's eye, the mind's eye of those beings are world systems. They're actually gods.
It seems like
Yeah,
this reality
the dreamers
is
of reality.
it's like a kindergarten where we have to develop ourselves to a certain level to kind of become something like a being that can create new worlds.
Yeah, it's like in reverse. It's like we have to develop ourselves to wake up to what we really are, which is them, the dreamers.
Yeah, you just read that bit where one piece of that projection of the disk of that curiosity wakes up and the curiosity becomes very excited about, oh, finally,
Yeah,
something
that's
is
you. That's all of us right now.
interesting happen.
Yeah, that's all of us right now. When you had your OBE to the center of the universe, that was curiosity smiling at you. That was your higher self.
Dude, the only thing that I think about it, I'm like, if this is my ticket back to the main to the higher self, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm ready.
exactly.
There's no problem. I'll just
Yeah.
finish this cycle, and if I will be allowed to go back, that will be pretty awesome for me.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, so it's like levels, you know, in the same way that, you know, we dream up these dream characters every night. The higher self is dreaming up all of our incarnations in our cluster, and then that higher self, or what Moen calls curiosity, is being dreamed up by consciousness with a capital C. Consciousness with a capital C is what I refer to as the Sambhogakaya, the 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 nodes in the brain of the Godhead, or the neurons in the brain of the Godhead. Yeah, the fathers in heaven. So it's like levels of dreaming. Like those beings are dreaming. I don't know how to count. It's hard to even call them beings. Those super consciousnesses are dreaming higher selves, and the higher selves are dreaming us. Yeah. So that's my 16 years of spiritual work for all of you in a nutshell. Right there.
Can I bring it a little deeper? So the dreams that we see, because like I dream realities, like I am a certain character that is living a life there. Like
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
person goes to
Exactly.
work, has a family. It's quite strange. So I'm literally creating universes in a dream.
Mm-hmm.
So where is it all coming from? It's not from movies. I've never thought about any of the stuff that I see in dreams. It's pretty insane.
I think what happens is that you in the dream, part of the dreamscape is connected to the higher self. So you have information bits from other parts of you in time. So that's why it's unrecognizable. Yeah, you're like, I've never been here before. I don't know what this is. I've never even seen this in a movie. But your cluster, or your higher self, is looking through the eyes of 4,000 incarnates, 10,000 incarnates. So there's a lot of information that your dreamscape is floating on top of.
So is in this situation, am I allowed to kind of deep into these other realities, or is this my cluster watching through my experience, watching other reincarnations? So, so is it like is the access granted to me to act to go into those realities, or am I just a tool for my higher self to watch those? I can't
It's both.
understand. I can be both. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's both. It's both. Because the higher self has a will. There's a destiny, but you don't have to follow it. You know, that's the whole concept of lost souls, right? It's like the probes just, for whatever reason, they go their own way, and that's probably part of curiosity's plan. Also, the higher self's plan to have a few parts of itself that are like, you know, pretty far gone, beyond help. uh,
Oh man, this time we went very deep.
yeah, yeah. It's like, oh well, that experiment kind of went off the rails, just like in life. Yeah, yeah. So it's both. Like on one hand, um, the permission is granted, and then on the other hand, you have your free will. So yeah, because one of the things that's observed in observed with the unfolding of destiny is that, and a lot of this is mentioned in a lot of the near death experiences as well, that it wasn't, people weren't forced to follow the plan that they'd set out to do. You know, before they incarnate, there was a plan, and then like, okay, let's see how it unfolds. But it's not yeah, it's not forced on the individual. It's just like it's like in life, like you could decide you want to do something and then change your mind. But sometimes when those decisions are major and we change our mind, there's some regret. So that's something that's indicated in the um near death experiences, and then between life regressions that people describe. They describe often that it may even have taken a few lifetimes to really get a particular lesson or a particular objective. So, like if the lesson, for example, was forgiveness, like total forgiveness, get to the level of, unbounded forgiveness. For some people, that's not something they have the capacity to get to in one incarnation.
David White recently said, when regret visits you, welcome it and allow it to inform your future.
Yeah. Yeah. Great quote. Well, all right, everyone. We're gonna end early today. But I hope this was good. And
It
if
was
you have any,
amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Thank you, everybody.
thanks for coming, everybody.
Thanks,
But yeah, if you have any OBEs or dreams, put it in the OBE cohort. I'm gonna share some of the recent ones I've been having in there. So
Thank you,
all right.
Ryan. Awesome class.
Thanks, everyone. See you tomorrow.